Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Shield, and welcome to Lunch with Lisa. I can't believe I just did that. All right. Well, it is great to be here, and I feel like it's been a long time since I've done one of these, but I think it's not even, it's been a week because I'm back again. Actually, I started a little late last week, so maybe it wasn't quite a week. All right. Um, I want to talk today about um, what do you call it? A comment that somebody wrote on my Apple podcast. And she wrote, "Not much here." There is some good information in this podcast. However, Lisa spends far too much time talking about herself and her experiences. As much as I believe she is happily married, her story is only so relevant for most of us. Great. Well, then, for those of you that my story isn't relevant to, then you're not my audience. So, feel free to go and listen to other people and other podcasts. I'm only speaking to the women who really, and men also, who resonate with my message. And the reason there is so much content out there and so many people doing this stuff is that there's lots of people with lots of different taste and opinions and all. And I really, really encourage you to find the podcast host who's right for you. So that's the great thing about having options and choices. Um, all right, let's see what else. Sorry, ladies, you're not going to find a rich husband who will buy you everything you want. I wouldn't call my husband a rich husband. I mean, I think he has riches, but we're by no means rich. And she said, but he does do whatever he can. He wants me to have the things I want. The great news is I work, I have a job, I put money in the coffers too. And we're able to live a pretty good life together. We don't have kids, and neither of us wanted them. So we're not rich, but we love enjoying our lives and making each other happy. And I think there's a lot of men out there who are looking for women who have lives like that. I'm not looking for my husband to buy me everything. I work. I have a career, I have a job. And then she says, I feel she is selling a fantasy rather than giving useful advice. Well, if you were to hang out with Benjamin and me, and many, many, many of our clients who have also found the guardians of their souls, you would see that they are in beautiful relationships, very much like the one I described to you on these podcasts. In fact, um, um, yeah, we have clients who have extraordinary partnerships, and they will tell us over and over again, I can't believe how easy this is, how in sync we are, how amazing that we just fall more and more in love. I mean, that's really what love is. I find it funny that you say I'm selling a fantasy. I mean, I'm actually selling a roadmap for having the fantasy, the one that Disney doesn't give you the roadmap for. Walt Disney will, tell, like, you'll see a fairy tale and the princess lives happily ever after, but they don't show you how to work through all your shit, how to go, excuse me, I don't normally use that word, but how to work through your stuff and really, face your fears and get out in the dating world and get rejected and get your heart broken so that you can have a love like this. So, you know, um, I don't I know that unconditional love is real. And I know that we can have this. Like, we can really have this. I've had it for 20 years. The real question I wish that this reviewer was asking was not how can I be critical and call this a fantasy and judge Lisa, but what of value? Maybe if I do believe this is true, how do I do that? This woman actually accomplished this in her life. How do I do that? Because that's what I want. Not sitting there and critiquing what I'm saying, but asking herself, wow, if what she's saying is true, what do I need to do to get there? And I'm not saying be like me and you'll be happy. I'm just trying to give you the tools and the skills and the process I used to get to where I am. So that's a big difference. I'm trying to show you what I did to have a relationship like this so you can so you can have one. I mean, I don't think there's many people on the planet who wouldn't want what I've had for the last 20 years. I think there's very few. But I think that people who don't want to do the work, who are afraid to look at themselves, they're going to shoot holes in what somebody else is saying. But that doesn't mean it's not real. So, I appreciate you stopping by and taking the time to write a review. And I'm not brushing what you're saying under the rug, but I really wish that you would, take a step back and listen to what I'm really saying, because what I'm doing is showing you how to have, a relationship for the ages, like real love, unconditional love. And I didn't just get lucky. This didn't just happen for me. I worked really hard to get here. So, I was so insecure growing up that I had no friends. Or at most, I could have one friend at a time because I was so afraid of what people would think about me and so codependent that I was terrified of people. When I was a kid, much of what I got was critical feedback. People didn't like me. They didn't like me. And that's not a sob story. It's just really the way it was. I wasn't popular. I didn't have friends. I was bullied and teased. I was that kid who would get a rock in her bag at Valentine's Day, or get fake Valentines from guys. And I never went to a prom. I never went to a school dance, not even with a group of girlfriends. So, getting here to a relationship, to a life I love, to actually having friendships and people who I love and who I know love me, that's been the work of a lifetime. And none of this came easily to me. None of it. For the longest time, I was very narcissistic, like my dad. I got a lot of narcissistic behavior that I inherited from my father. And, we just pick this stuff up. We don't know we're doing it. It's just who we become because we're conditioned by being around our parents. And so I became very walled off and guarded and narcissistic. I was so defensive. Oh my God. If I had read a review like that of me, the fact that I can have that really receive that feedback and, take it to heart and not be defensive about it. Oh my God, that's like a miracle, because I was so sensitive, and any criticism, I would get defensive, and I would be so hurt and wounded. It would go into a drama. I'd hold on to it forever. And so even just being able to read a review like that and not beat myself up over it or feel badly about it is, a sign of how far I've come in my life. So like 34 years, I was defensive, I was guarded, I was walking on eggshells, worrying what people thought of me. And I married the first man that I really connected with. And don't get me wrong, we had a lot of fun, and we were both fashion photographers at the time. And I moved to Milan, and then he wound up following me there. Um, it was a very, very, very dark and wounded relationship. Um, but we also had a lot of fun, and we were there for each other. And I was so afraid. I was so scared to open up, to be myself, to go for the things I really wanted in life. And so I kind of just used him. I clung to him as a life raft. And even though I knew he wasn't the kind of man I really saw myself with, he was the man who would be with me. And we were very dysfunctional. We weren't growing. We weren't really going anywhere. My career was stalled. I couldn't get jobs because I was so insecure. I was afraid to get work. And it got so bad that I started, and I got so afraid really that he was going to figure out that I couldn't get my life together and that he would leave me. And so I started to just process my life. I mean, I hit bottom. I didn't know what to do. And I had, I talk about this on my website. I may have mentioned this before, but somehow this little tiny book from Paramahansa Yogananda had landed in my hands. Like, I don't even know how I found it, how I got it, where it came from, but it was a little tiny book, and it was called the Success Principles, or the Principles of Success, something like that. And I just started reading a few pages of this little book each day. And then I'd go into the dark room and I'd print and I'd think about my life and what I'd read. And it just started to expand my mind. And I started looking at things differently. It started opening me up to new ways of thinking and seeing my life. And it was absolutely incredible. And in that dark room, in these 3 months that I was in there printing, I mean, I don't know what else to say or what to call it, but a spiritual awakening. And it really was. And I don't even know, I've said those words like, oh, I had a spiritual awakening or whatever, it's kind of like a cliche, but it really was. And I started to become another person in that dark room because of that little tiny book. And I started to question myself, almost like a therapist would. Why are you so sad? Why are you so defensive? Um, what would it look like if you were to leave your husband, if this relationship did end? And I started thinking about all these things that I had been afraid to look at. And I really started to see, I was sad because my mom had died of cancer, and I had made up this story that I'd always be sad. And I was. I had told myself that, and then I just was this sad person. And then, you know, um, I started to look at why I was so defensive. Why was I defensive? Why did people try to tell me you're so defensive? What did they mean by that when they would say it? Because when you tell a defensive person they're defensive, they'll say I'm not defensive. So they get defensive about being defensive. And I started to look at that behavior, and I was like, well, why do I do that? And why are people saying that to me? And I started to realize how deeply insecure I was and how afraid I was to get critical feedback, because people had been mean to me growing up. And the feedback I got was often not nice or kind. And so I was very afraid. I was terrified to look at myself, because if the feedback was so negative, that must have meant I was an awful person. I really was not a loser. I was a loser because of the way people treated me and talked to me. And that was a very hard thing to do, to ask myself, why are people treating me that way? Why do they feel they can? What is it that I'm doing or not doing that's allowing people to talk to me that way and treat me that way? And I had to look at that stuff. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. But what I saw was that I had a lot of growing up to do. I wasn't a very attractive person. And when I say attractive, not just physically, but emotionally, I was an emotionally unattractive woman. And that was really hard to look at. I was sad. I was depressed. I was insecure. I was emotionally needy because I hadn't gotten a lot of positive feedback. And, you know, so I was needy. And those aren't attractive behaviors. I was also a know it all. I put myself out there like I was an authority on things and try to make myself, seem big, somehow seem important when I wasn't. And to be honest, a lot of those behaviors were things I learned from my father, but they became who I was. And God, there was just so much I had to look at about myself and really take ownership for. There was fear that I had to walk through. I had to learn just how to even um, feel comfortable around other people. I didn't even know what people wanted to talk about. My mother and my grandmother used to spend a lot of time gossiping about people behind their backs. And I really literally thought that's what people did. I thought that that's what conversations were. They were about gossip because that's all I knew. And I was afraid that when I wasn't around, other people were gossiping about me because that's what my mom and grandma did. So I was so insecure and lost. And I had to find my way. So when I left my first husband, I just started to work with anybody I could find, teachers and, gurus and therapists and whatever. I mean, luckily, um, I like who I am and I have good instincts, I think. And I found very good mentors and teachers, people who um, if I felt that somebody had something to offer me, something that I have always done when I've worked with people that, I don't see everybody doing. I never put any of my mentors or teachers up on a pedestal, ever, ever. I never, when I worked with Don Miguel, I never had him on a pedestal. For anyone who doesn't know, Don Miguel Ruiz has written some very, very popular self help books. I worked with him before he wrote these books, but he's written The Four Agreements and The Mastery of Love and The Voice of Knowledge. These are all wonderful books, life-changing books. If you haven't read them, I really think you should. At least The Mastery of Love and The Four Agreements. But when I met Don Miguel, I didn't put him up on a pedestal. I never did that with any of my teachers. I just saw them as people who had answers that I needed. And I was willing to learn from them. And I didn't take everything hook, line, and sinker. I know they're human and they're fallible, and they are and they were. So, I always kept a very grounded approach to all of that. And even with my spirituality, I'm an earthy person. and I really am grounded. That's one of my qualities. So when I did all this work, I went to these teachers looking for answers, and I was very um, grateful to them for what they shared with me. And I learned a lot from these people. I learned a lot about a better way to be, a more spiritual way of being in the world, thinking not just about myself and my own needs, but about how to give back and how to be of service and how to think about other people and making sure that I think one of the biggest issues for me when I was younger was that it was all about me because I didn't know how to relate and connect with other people at all. And so it really was all about me trying to get what I needed. And people can feel that. And there's also no room for connection when I was being that way. There was no way for people to connect with me because it wasn't a back and forth. I wasn't giving, but I didn't know how to. Nobody actually ever taught me how to give and be generous and, share honestly. And so I had to learn all of these things. I remember reading the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that was a revelation. Can you imagine that? Just simple concepts like people like the sound of their own name. That was crazy. Like, I never even thought, I'm like, well, wow, that just makes so much sense. And it's so easy to do when you're talking to somebody actually using their name. And that connects, that makes them feel good to hear the sound of their name and that but even like really putting the spotlight on the other person and being interested instead of interesting. My whole life, that's all I did, for 34 years of my life was try to be interesting to other people. But again, that was about me. I didn't know how to be interested. So I remember reading that book and I was like, oh my God. And they seemed like just such basic, straightforward concepts. But I was like, oh my God, this is the truth. And nobody ever taught me these things. So that was a revelation for me to read that book because it was so doable and simple and practical but it opened up this whole world of possibility for me to start connecting with people, to stop being so self-focused and to start looking at other people. If I go back a little further, I would also share when I'm talking about love and relationships and all, I had a very, very, very unfulfilling relationship with my father. Very unfulfilling. And as a woman, I wanted so badly to connect with him. I really did. And with my brother too. I wanted, to connect to these men in my life. And I was never able to. I never made a real connection with my father. And I've never made a real connection with my brother, even though my brother's still alive and he's here. We don't have a real connection. And that's heartbreaking too, because these were two of the primary men in my life. And I don't feel like they ever really have known me. And I don't feel like I ever got a chance to really know them. So, yeah, that was really sad. And it took a lot for me. I didn't really have any men in my life. I was married or I was with my ex-husband for a total of 13 years. But, we were so wounded and damaged, and it was so dysfunctional that while it was a 13-year relationship, it was just so unhealthy looking back. We were kind of limping through life together. We really were. And if I hadn't been fortunate enough, not fortunate that my mother died when I was 15, but my mom and my grandma both passed away. They both passed away when I was, by the time I was 21, and my dad was remarried to another woman. So I didn't really have anybody. And Yeah, it was really hard. There was nobody to really guide me through life. I didn't really have a touchstone or somebody that I could go back to for all of this. And so I decided when I looked at my life and I stopped lying to myself, and I'll tell you where I really, really stopped lying was when I went to a 12-step program. And, you know, 12-step is, you could say a million things about it. I mean, whatever, we can shoot holes in anything. But that program really did change my life. And I am so grateful to what I got from that program. It was amazing because of all the things I'd ever done in my life. It forced me to really grow up, to be honest with myself in a way that I had never been honest before, to rip off band aids and really look at some cold, hard truths about myself and realize that I was no better or no worse than anyone else out there. And it gave me that at a heart level. I really found myself there. And partly because it is so humbling to go to a 12-step program. It really is. You know, people don't go there because they love it, because it's cool, because whatever. People go there because they're really desperate for help. Something in their life isn't working and they desperately need help. And there's a kind of help that you get there. Other people showing up for you, being there for you, being of service, helping you because they know what it's like to be where you are. And it's really humbling. It really is. We can judge people in all kinds of ways and tell ourselves, I'm better than this, or I'm better him, or better than her, or whatever. But when you're in a 12-step program, you're so grateful to the people who are there, who are helping you with this issue that you couldn't solve. And you're either doing it or you're not. It's very black and white. And I love that too, because it's just clear. You're either sober or you're not sober. You're either abstinent or you're not abstinent. You're either, but you're doing it or you're not doing it. And it was that clear delineation and having to be ruthlessly honest with myself when I did this. And please don't get me wrong, I didn't do it perfectly. I will never, ever, ever be a perfect student. So just know that. I think the title of this broadcast was Nobody's Perfect. So yeah, I will never be the star student. I don't, I know that. I didn't try to do it perfectly. I fell off many times. My program was a food program. I fell off many times. I had lots and lots and lots of moments of, wanting to lie and cheat the system and whatever. But the thing about that black and white of a 12-step program is that, in the back of your mind, even if you're lying, even if you're trying to be deceptive, even if you're cheating, the only person you're really lying to and cheating is yourself. That's the thing. And you can hear that tape in the back of your, you're going to your sponsor and you're not being honest, or you're saying just enough, but not saying everything. You're withholding information, or you're twisting the facts to make it look the way you want it to. But you're doing that, and it really calls you out. So I grew up in that program, and it helped me become an adult. I would have never attracted my husband if I hadn't learned simple things about gratitude and how to keep my side of the street clean and how to clean up my messes quickly and be accountable and be teachable and to surrender and to be humble. All of those things I really learned in that program. And I'm not in it anymore. I made a conscious choice to leave because it's so demanding and it required that I weigh and measure my food all the time. And there were certain restrictions that I made a conscious choice that I didn't want to continue doing. But what that program gave me was phenomenal, phenomenal. And that really was where I just humbled myself and really got real with how, yeah, how much work I had to do, how much growing up, how emotionally immature and irresponsible I had been in my life. And I started to become accountable. And no, there was no straight line and it wasn't perfect. And, I put myself out there and I got my heart broken and, you know, and all. But I was in a 12-step meeting one day and it was a meditation meeting. I think we had a 5 or 10 minute meditation at the beginning of that meeting. And at the time I was reading Eckhart Tolle, I was reading The Power of Now, and I was very present to the now, this moment. And so I put the pieces together and I realized for the first time in that moment, in that meeting, that unconditional love is real. Most spiritual paths are teaching us how to find it. They're showing us how to reach unconditional love in this lifetime. And I knew, I had always thought that it was something that was ideal. Like this woman said, this is a fantasy. I thought that a real, true, unconditional love was something that you only saw in saints and ascended beings, and that normal people like me couldn't have that. And what I realized was, no, they're telling us if there's only the now, they're telling us how to do it now. And so I decided that I was going to find it. And here's the wonderful thing about going on a spiritual journey like that. I didn't know how I was going to find it. I just knew that I was committed to finding it and that it was real and that I could have it. And so that's what I searched for, and that's what I found. And I created a roadmap, 12 weeks, that's all I need to help you find the guardian of your soul, that unconditionally loving relationship where two people want what's best for each other and the relationship between them. It's out there. It really is. And we can find it. I have hundreds of clients who are in phenomenal relationships because of the work they did with me. So please do yourself a favor, go to lisashield.com, click the button, and watch my free 45-minute presentation. And stay to the end, because that's where you can book a call with me or a member of my team. And on that call, we're going to talk to you about what we can do to help you find the guardian of your soul. Here's the truth. What Walt Disney said really does exist. There is a love that is as beautiful and lasting as time. But he doesn't tell us how to find it. What he tells us is that there's just a guy that's going to show up in your life and you're going to go, both of you are going to go, oh, there you are. Yeah, there you are. I've been looking for you. What took you so long? And then you're going to live this fantasy life till the end of time. I'm going to give you the part that Walt Disney missed, right? The actual roadmap for how to get there. All right, this is enough of me babbling on and on and on. I'm Lisa Shield, and I just want to thank you for being here. Please go check out my website, lisashield.com. It took us about a year to do it. It's really spectacular. You'll learn a lot about me, my husband, my team, and what we can do for you. Also, be sure to rate and like this podcast. And if you don't like it, that's okay too. Just put that down and let us know your thoughts. There are a lot of women who are struggling in this part of their lives. And yeah, just let us know. I can take it. And then if you'd like, you can also give us a thumbs up on YouTube. There are a lot of older broadcasts there that you will not find on this new podcast series. So check that out as well. And please send us your feedback and your questions. And you can do that by writing to podcast@lisashield.com. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me. And I will see you next time. Bye bye.